Everyone, welcome back. I think right now we're living in a time, as I've mentioned before, what I'm calling the undercurrent. I think by definition, that's just something I came up with, but actually it turns out the undercurrent actually means the things that often go unsaid in the current zeitgeist in which we live. And you know, the zeitgeist that we live in is filled with human suffering, is devoid of compassion and humanity that this world so desperately needs right now. And it's hard for the thought leaders out there to put forward positive things because we just see how destructive these outside forces are. I know for myself, I personally am wanting to elevate consciousness, manifestation, connecting with Source, God, Spirit, Jesus. And it's really difficult with all the distractions going on, right? We recognize that's the thing that we need to do to be able to raise or elevate our frequency to help heal this world. But it's also kind of an unrelenting battle to fight. So I wonder then, how did we get where we are today? How did it happen? To me, a lot of this is born of the sickness of our current president. He's an extremely sick man. And the sycophants that dance around him, soulless, mind you, soulless. I don't think it's wrong to view things that way. I know it's dehumanizing them in a way. And, since we're being dehumanized, how does two wrongs make a right? The biggest problem, though, is there's absolutely no reasoning with that side. Zero, zilch, none, because there's not any point of agreement. And so when these conversations unfold, we're dealing with people that are so far gone that they do not understand. And it's groupthink that's involved with this, right? I think of it kind of like Waco, Texas, right? With the cult that formed there. Or even the cults, the Hindi cults. I don't know, it was the Bhagavad Gita. But the Eastern beliefs that came to the United States in the 1970s. There's a documentary on it called, I think, Wild Wild Country on Netflix. It's really pretty fascinating. But it was how the gurus basically, created communes, and what actually happened in these communes was pretty crazy. You can think of it as kind of like group orgy kind of stuff. Hopefully that doesn't downrank my video by saying that. But I think back to my childhood, and there's somewhat of a confusion given my age. I'm 40 this year. And I look back 10, 20 years ago and just how different it was. You look at the job economy, you look at the market. People were switching jobs regularly every 2 to 3 months. It felt like, and it was not even a big deal. I mean, yeah, you might be selected out of 5 to 20 candidates, not the way it is today. Yet we're told, the unemployment rate's only 4%. I don't believe it. I personally don't believe it. And I think that's the part that can get a person down in this world, is recognizing that there's a lack of transparency, and the people at the top really, truly do not care. And what's evidenced of that is given the fact that, they're making record profits and they're still laying people off. Partially born out of AI, partially born out of COVID and paranoia, but also kind of like, hey, we're going to do it. When you have a leader that's so morally corrupt and decrepit, you would think people like Facebook or Google would not be going up to him asking for favor, for very obvious reasons, right? Because of him getting banned and censored. And, but yet that's exactly what they did. They didn't want any trouble with whatever they're trying to do. And for them, $1 million is cents on the dollar to basically say, don't screw with us. And he's like, okay, and that's kind of mafia kind of stuff to show up and be like, okay, if you give me money, I'll help you out, let alone all the pardons that have happened. And so anyways, I digress. The point is, we all need to use our collective voices. Sometimes it can feel futile at times because the opposition on the other side is so unrelenting in a way that's purely unnatural, I would say. And we're lacking in the departments of compassion in this world. And, if really, white Christian nationals were actually practicing the actual teachings of Jesus and stuff, they would actually be like, well, we got to help people on the street or homeless people or whoever they think is that, what ill society. And it's often a scapegoat and a distraction from the stuff that they're doing behind the scenes, right? Like USAID. Why was that all shut down? Why was the organization, I'm trying to remember what it's called, but the one that Consumer Protection Bureau, why was that shut down, right? We currently live in like an antitrust haven. And let's just mention one last thing, which is the Federal Reserve is basically a huge Ponzi scheme. It's one thing if the Federal Reserve is looking out for the best interests of everyday Americans, but it's another when, there is, we're approaching, a time in history where there are both haves and have-nots. And, it plays right into their psychology because they don't pay taxes. As you won't own anything and you'll be happy, right? Because that's what they do through their trusts, etc. But in reality, when they pass it on to the kids, it's tax-free and all that jazz. And so, it's a legal loophole. And it's something that we should all be doing because it ensures that you don't pay taxes for appreciation, when the beneficiaries take over the estate. They're only taxed for, the time that the beneficiaries receive the estate to the time they sell it, if there is appreciation. And of course, we're now working with, real pages and, setting rent by an algorithm. And a lot of this is born out of BlackRock and those organizations, really not looking at I apologize if I'm not using the right terms here, but basically placing it from the place of liquid assets, money, into hard assets like real estate. And it's unrelenting. So that's in part why the costs are going up, in addition to, Trump's stupid damn war in Iran. I just don't get the supporters. I really, really don't get it. You can make excuses for this guy as much as you want. And I know groupthink's involved and you're going to be ostracized and left out unless you agree with the people in your state predominantly. I guess the main thing, as I mentioned during my last video, I'm concerned about is that these elections are going to be stolen. And, hopefully the SAVE Act doesn't pass. But at the end of the day, it's all about disenfranchising voters, and they were already going to do stuff in the states, and now they seized the ballots to do all that stuff. So anyways, I know this is like a highly political video, but it's worth mentioning that, and, Republicans taking over most of the electronic voting systems, because they say they want free and fair elections. And the current president wants to run for a third term, which is against the Constitution, but we already know he takes a shit on the Constitution. So I could be talking in circles about this. The bottom line is we live in insane, crazy, strange times. And we need to let that undercurrent bubble to the surface and to speak about it. Because if we don't, and a shared voice, it's like 1984, without resistance, it just happens. It's totally the bystander effect in motion. And the question is, as Americans, do we really value our freedom anymore? And what the hell are we scared about? Is the intimidation? Is it the mob mentality? As he said to the Proud Boys, stand back, stand by, and to where we are today. But it's just the assault on our capital, and they can call it a riot, they can call it a false flag, Antifa, Black Lives Matter event as much as they want. But what's funny is they tie fascism to liberalism, which they need to look at the definition of fascism. They really, really do. They just need to open up a fucking dictionary. Fucking morons. So anyways, I think that we need to be talking about this much, much more. And if these ideas and philosophies and feelings resonate with you deeply, I'm speaking to your soul, please, rate, comment, subscribe, do the usual. If you want to see more videos, you need to enable notifications. Otherwise, you're not going to see them, potentially. I know there's a lot out on there on the internet, a lot of things that are being spewed. And what's even more crazy about this whole thing is this was all being predicted in Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, with the AI colonel revealing himself to not be a colonel, but an AI agent, and how AI was created to undo the cesspool that's become our virtual world with the internet. There's just so many competing voices for attention that things are very divided. And the truth is they want us divided. They want, black people divided from white people. And that's the strategy, right? They're trying to remind us it's a horizontal race and a horizontal problem, when in reality it's a vertical problem. All these groups are below the oligarchs, and the oligarchs want us to, distracted. And so, anyways, I hope that you take the time to realize that you're valid for the way you feel. You are enough. We live in kind of a heartless time right now, and I don't know exactly how we go about fixing it, but I know talking about it is important, rather than just letting it simmer under the surface, and for us in private to have these moments, deep moments of realization that are very painful, and no one else to relate to. So I don't know if this video will find people, but if it does, please show the love so this channel can grow and more people can see it. And I would love to incorporate your guys' voices in the future with something I have planned. And I hope it becomes a popular thing. I do have some, people that I'm inspired by. And I'll have to tell you in a different video who they are, but a couple different people that I'm just like, that's totally my approach to things, And the other component to that, to just be really real, to tell you, I've experienced it, is, with COVID and everything. That's what it's like to be dealing with a chronic illness as well, and I do deal with a chronic illness, unfortunately. It's that same kind of isolation that we all felt when we were all locked inside our houses. And well, that might have been more mental pain. It's a form of pain, just like physical pain. And so I think that's the best way I would explain to someone that doesn't have a chronic illness what it's like. It's like COVID never ended. And before COVID started, people with chronic illnesses know this all so well, the challenges that we face on a daily basis. That said, I know God has called me forward to share these messages and get them out there so I can make a difference and start leading somewhat of a counterculture resistance to what's going on, because it's really not okay. It's not okay. This should not be the new normal. And with enough voices, they say 3.5%, but with enough voices, I think it's going to come down to the people to demand it, unfortunately, because Democrats really feel like they've been selling out. And again, the question is, how does a person that commits a coup against this country and goes to Georgia and asks for votes and cheats his way through everything, and then, of course, lambasts and gaslights his competition for doing the very thing that he does, like what he had to say about Robert Mueller, for instance. He's really talking about himself. And who the fuck is them? Who is them? All you have to do is change the noun to him, the pronoun to him, the noun to his name, and it applies across the board. He's just a projectionist. I don't know where they get their fucking energy from. It's disturbing. All right, peace and love to you all. Till next time. See ya.